Hello, good morning, welcome and welcome back. This is Kesha, and we are continuing our reading in Prosperity's 10 Commandments by Georgiana Tree West. So let's go ahead and close our eyes and center. Begin by taking a deep breath in and out. Another deep breath in and out. On the next deep breath in, release the busyness of the morning. And release any thoughts and concerns about how the day may go. Let's bring ourselves present to this moment. And now just see a column of white light coming down over you. And in this light is all that you will need. It's peace, wisdom, strength. Breathe. Feel the light moving in and through you as you breathe in and out. Feel it quickening each cell of the body. See it dissolving anything not like itself, any area of dis-ease or discomfort. See it dissolving and releasing. In the light, you are whole and strong. You now breathe in the light with the intention of opening and expanding the heart. Feel it opening and expanding your vision. And feel it opening and expanding your wisdom. And in this space, we'll gently open our eyes and begin. All right. So we're on the fifth commandment. Thou shalt deal honorably with God and with all human instruments through which God's good is manifested for you. We are to be courteous and render due obedience to God as the giver of all good gifts. And since we are constantly accepting his bounty, we are in justice bound to give him what is his due. The law of compensation teaches us to return full value always. All the laws of life operate in accord toward the end of establishing perfect balance on all planes of our existence. If we do not consciously endeavor to give full value always for what we receive, the subconscious action of our mind always moves toward establishing of balance at some point in some way. The sooner we learn to discharge our just obligation as we progress daily, the sooner we find ourselves established in more harmonious, because better balanced ways of living. We accept gladly of God, but we are prone to forget that there is something justly due him from us. When making a demonstration, we are accepting God's law working in our behalf. When the demonstration is completed, we must pay what is justly due God if we would deal honorably with him. One of the necessary ways of establishing ethical conduct towards God is the practice of tithing. The tither is obeying the injunction, honor Jehovah with thy substance and with the first fruits of all thine increase. And tithing is simply the partnering with God in your money, right? Or with the blessings that you've received. And to honor the Lord our God with our substance is to render inner service, to acknowledge his presence in prayer, praise, and silent worship. To honor him with the first fruits of our increase is to render outer service, to give a just portion of the supply we demonstrate to the maintenance of his work here on earth. Rightly understood, tithing is a form of worship. True prayer must include acknowledgement. There is no surer way to acknowledging God as the source of supply than the actual giving back to God of a portion of all that we have received from God. We may acknowledge God as our source of supply in silence and in words and still not actually show our faith because we put this acknowledgement into action. The only way to go into action on any belief is to express it in tangible form. Tithing is really the outer aspect of the threefold nature of worship: prayer, praise, and giving. To be prayerful, praiseful, and bountiful in giving is worship truly. Viewed from a practical angle, tithing is accounting to God for what we receive. It is actual recognition as God is the source of our supply. Without tithing, the recognition is purely theoretical. We may say then that tithing is a guarantee of man's good faith in God as his supply. It is recognition of God's ownership and man's stewardship. That's really important. We think we own things, but really we are simply stewards. And when we're looking, because money is an exchange, right? When we're looking to receive greater and experience a life more abundant, it's important that we first, since we're asking of God to work for us, that we be in partnership and return a small portion to Him. And if you think about it, there isn't really another relationship that you could have where someone else does 90% of the work and gets 10% of the reward, right? So it certainly works to your benefit to have the power and action of God move through your life. And then when you see evidence of that, return that 10% portion back to Him. And we're not returning, well, we are returning it to God, but we're sending that tithe to this place of spiritual nourishment. So where you find that you were given inspiration and insight and wisdom into how to live that life more abundant, how to overcome that health challenge, how to meet that particular need, it's important that you tithe to that source so that they can then continue their work in spirit, reaching a greater audience. It's simply an acknowledgement. And if we say that we believe in God for everything, but then are too unsure and needful of what money we have in our hand and we're holding it so tightly, then we're not allowing the full flow of God to work in and through us. Back to the book. We see this all working in nature. Every harvest is an increase or multiplication of the seed originally planted. Some part of the harvest must be given back to nature if there is to be a future harvest. The same law is operative in the realm of human affairs. A just portion of all that is received from God must be given back to God to support His work. The question often arises, why do we give a tenth of all that we demonstrate rather than some other portion? The answer is that the mystics of all ages, particularly those of the Hebrew race, assign certain symbolic values to numbers, and the number of 10 is always the number of increase. Mathematically speaking, with each count of 10, we begin a new series of numbers, entering a new cycle of increase. Since the number 10 then symbolizes increase, it is logical to use a tenth of the wealth we demonstrate as our prosperity seed, which we return to the source from which it came, knowing that as it is put to work, it produces ever increasingly rich harvests of God's bounty in our life. The idea of increase as associated with tithing works both ways. It increases man's service to God and increases God's supply in man's life. I have found that to be true in so many ways. It's sometimes difficult to see on the daily basis your growth. And even over time, you can think back to how you were maybe 6 months or a year ago, and it's like, yeah, not too much has changed. But I had the experience, especially that first year that I was tithing. My tithe was the first year that I tithed, I had been unemployed and underemployed for most of the year, and my tithe was about $1,100. So obviously I wasn't making very much money. And within a couple of years, I think it was just a few years, my tithe went to just over $11,000. That was some real increase. And it really wasn't, I mean, I could tell that incrementally life was getting better, but when I saw the yearly change in the amount of my tithes to go from 1,100 to 11,000, that signified real growth and real like prosperity that had come into my life. Not just the fact that when I got those greater amounts, I was able to do more. To really see that change in the growth in numbers was really quite astounding. Where was I? Jesus mentioned tithing on only 2 occasions, once in a parable and once when addressing a group of Pharisees. Each time he spoke of it in a way that indicated he considered it a matter to be taken for granted. It was his teaching that the letter killeth, but the spirit giveth life. So tithing as a mere outer action performed with the idea of gaining favor with God is of no value in the life of the individual. We're not giving to God as a bribe. God, you do this for me by this prayer, and I will give back to you. I'll give it to you then. It's simply an acknowledgement that the action of God has moved in our lives and we are improved by it. He made this plain when he said to the Pharisees, Ye tithe mint and anise and cumin, and have left undone the weightier matters of law, justice, and mercy and faith. But these ye ought to have done, and not to have left the outer undone. In the Moffat translation into modern English, the passage reads, You tithe mint and dill and cumin, and omit the weightier matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. These latter you ought to have practiced without omitting the former. It is quite evident that Jesus was rebuking the Pharisees because they were worshiping God according to the letter of the law of Moses, but the true spirit of the worship was not in their hearts. To be efficacious tithing, like prayer, must be a matter of inner feeling as well as outer action. The outer form is like an empty shell. It is the feeling that accompanies it that makes both tithing and prayer of inestimable value in our life. I think we're going to leave it there for now. If you are struck by this message and considering it, I recommend that you do try it. If for some reason in your heart and thought of giving 10% seems too much, you might try starting with 5 and tithing on net income. And then eventually, as you become more comfortable and you see the benefits and your heart opens to being given to give greater, then you may move to tithing on your gross income, and then moving to tithe at that 10%. Like the book said, and as I'm trying to tell you too, it is of inestimable value. As you open and give, you are then hands open, ready to receive. And if you are asking that God move through your world, then you certainly want to acknowledge your greater partner in the actions they produce on your behalf. I think that's enough for today. We will come back to this book on Wednesday. If you have any questions or thoughts, please share them in the comments. Like and subscribe, because that does help the channel and help more people see it. And we really want to share this message with all who are interested. All right, my love to you in the meantime until we meet again on Wednesday, and have a good one. Bye.